What's up, millennials? How many bearish arguments can you think about for AgEagle and drone companies in general? We often talk about the bullish arguments for stocks, but sometimes it's also good to look at the other side of the argument. Today we're going to talk about some potential issues for drone companies in general and AgEagle in particular, so let's do it! Before we start talking about these issues, do keep in mind that AgEagle is still one of my positions and I'm definitely bullish on the company long term still. One of the first counter-arguments for drones is that we see more and more companies focusing on autonomous vehicles. And the thing is, of course, these autonomous vehicles could be used also for package delivery, so why would we still need drones? Well, I think that drones would be still useful for the smaller packages. I do think the larger packages would be delivered by these autonomous vehicles indeed, but I think the drones would be more suitable for the smaller packages. Because if you think about it, drones do have some advantages over autonomous vehicles in my opinion. Drones can, for example, just take off vertically and then go in a straight line and then go down and then drop off the package. That is something that the autonomous vehicles cannot do. And that is also one of the reasons why package delivery via drones is cheaper in general if you compare it to autonomous vehicles. So in general, I do think that smaller packages are going to be delivered by drones in the future, but the larger packages by autonomous vehicles. I also found a few counter arguments on a drone platform, so even the commercial drone pilots are not very bullish about drone delivery, or at least package delivery via drones. One of the counter arguments is, for example, what if you don't have a suitable landing area for your drone delivery or package delivery via drones? Well, the thing is, right now I live, for example, in an apartment building. We have like 100 apartments over here, and I don't really have a backyard where the drone can simply drop off the package. So we would need something like a mailbox. Well, if you have been following me for a while, and if you have seen my videos about AgEagle, you might know that AgEagle has partnered up with a company called Valqari. And Valqari is a company that makes exactly these boxes for drone delivery, or at least package delivery via drones. So the drones can simply land on top of these mailboxes, and they can drop off the package, and then the package is being delivered to one of these little boxes over here. So you, as a resident of an apartment building, for example, can go to one of these mailboxes and retrieve your package that way. Another potential issue is the weather. I personally live in the Netherlands, and here we don't really have a beautiful climate overall. In summer it's pretty good, but in winter and in spring and in autumn, usually we do have a lot of rain and we do have a lot of wind going on too. So I'm kind of wondering, are drones going to be able to go against these weather conditions, and are they even going to be able to deliver packages if there is a lot of rain, if there is a lot of wind? Another possibility is that people are going to try to shoot the drones out of the air, for example, or even steal the drones, because these drones are definitely worth quite a bit of money. Now, I can definitely imagine this could be a potential issue, but I also think that the drone companies right now are working on security, so we just need to wait and see what is going to happen in the real world. So what about the noise for drones? Well, if they are flying low, it can definitely be a little bit noisy, but right now the drone companies are definitely working on using silent rotors so you can minimize the amount of noise that drones make when they come very close to you. So in theory, I don't really believe this is going to be a major issue, but I do think that it can be annoying if you have hundreds of drones flying around you in a city. And then what is going to happen when a new drone kills someone, if it falls out of the sky and it just falls on top of someone, for example, or the rotors are going to lacerate someone's skin? Well, that is going to be a real issue, because keep in mind what happened to Tesla, for example, when they were hit by pieces of news that Tesla cars were simply crashing into trees. So that could be a real potential issue, but with regards to physical accidents, the drone companies now have to follow the FAA regulation, the regulation from the Federal Aviation Administration. And one of those rules requires that small drones do not have any exposed rotating parts that could lacerate the human skin. So I do believe that the risk of physical accidents is going to be minimized by regulations like this one, but I don't really think there's going to be zero issues. There are probably going to be physical accidents at some point in the future. And then another short-term issue, I believe, is the regulation, because legislators tend to work a little bit slowly. They don't really want to rush things, so it can definitely take a while before regulation comes in place. We have seen Brendan Torres de Klet talking about this too. He also believes that the regulation is going to take take longer than people are expecting, and he believes that the technology is already there, the software is already there. He believes that we can already see 50 drones being operated at the same time by 1 or 2 pilots, for example. But the problem is that while the technology is there, the regulation is not there just yet, so they aren't able to do this legally. So as long as there is no regulation in place, I do believe that it is going to be very difficult for drone companies to scale up their operations. Let's then focus a little bit more on AgEagle in particular, because the thing is, one of the potential issues that AgEagle could have is that they are going to focus too much on the hemp industry, on the agriculture industry, and not on package delivery. Don't get me wrong, I do believe that we are going to see growth in the hemp industry too, and I believe that drones are going to be more and more important in the agriculture industry as well. But I do believe that package delivery is going to grow way faster in the next 10 years or so compared to agriculture. So I believe that if AgEagle is going to focus too much on the agriculture industry, they might miss out on the package delivery industry instead. Then what about the unique selling point of AgEagle? Because this might have been actually the hemp industry, a company that was focusing on drones for agriculture, but right now they are shifting a little bit, of course, from the hemp industry to package delivery. Let's see what route they are going to take exactly in the next 5 years or so. But the thing is that right now, if we take a look at the 10Q, the latest Q1 filing, we can see that the spend on research and development is very low if you compare that to the other costs out there. In Q1, they spent about $233,000 on R&D, and they had a revenue of $1.7 million. So that is about like 14% or so. So yeah, if you compare that to the amount of money they spent on sales and marketing, and especially on the general and administrative costs, and also on the professional fees, the R&D spend is not very high. So the question is AgEagle going to become a company that is going to be able to research and develop enough so that they can stay ahead of the competition? Right now, I believe that AgEagle is priding itself on having a complete solution for companies. So they are basically vertically integrated. They have the hardware, they have the software, so companies don't really need to go to different companies at the same time, but they can just go to AgEagle for all of their drone solutions. Now, the thing is, they did not do this by researching and developing, but they more or less did this by acquiring companies. They first acquired MicaSense for the sensors, for the hardware parts, and then they acquired Measure for the software parts, the control system, of course. So I'm wondering if AgEagle is going to be able to stay ahead of the competition, not only by acquiring new companies, but also by researching and developing new products and new services. So the main question here is, can they become unique? Can they have a unique selling point without mergers and acquisitions? But who needs a unique selling point if you just work for Amazon, right? Well, of course, we don't know for sure yet who is that major e-commerce client. It could be Amazon, but it could also be very well another company out there. But the thing is, if it's not going to be Amazon, if AgEagle says that they are actually working with another company that people don't really like, then the stock could definitely go down quite a bit because they would be disappointed that it is not Amazon. But whether it's Amazon or not, do keep in mind that it is still just one major customer that they have. And if you go back to the 10K, their annual filing of last year, 2020, you can see that the revenue that comes from customer A is basically 94% of the revenue for the year 2020. So the problem is, if this company doesn't really like AgEagle anymore, maybe they don't like the process anymore, and they simply dump AgEagle, then AgEagle would actually lose out on a lot of revenue from that customer and a lot of revenue in general. However, do keep in mind that AgEagle acquired 2 companies this year, MicaSense and Measure, and I believe especially MicaSense is going to bring quite a lot of revenue to the table, so I believe that is going to mitigate basically the issues, the potential issues that could arise if major customer, the e-commerce client, is going to dump AgEagle. You could also make the argument that AgEagle is a relatively unstable company, especially if you look at the CEO changes. Because last year we had a new CEO, Michael Drost, and I made a video about that guy saying that he was likely going to leave the company within a few years or so. But then just a few weeks ago we had the news that we are going to have a new CEO, Brendan Torres de Klet. So yeah, that is definitely a signal of a little bit of instability for the company, and it could be a potential issue in the future if investors believe believe that AgEagle continues to be unstable and the CEOs are not really going to stay at the company for a long time. By the way, I recently did a video on the new CEO of AgEagle. If you haven't checked out that video, definitely do so. And just a little side note over here, because the abbreviation for Brendan Torres Declet is BTD, and did you know that the abbreviation BTD also means something else? Buy the dip? Then the topic of transparency, because I believe that AgEagle has not been very transparent over the last couple of years. They did, of course, have a non-disclosure agreement, so they were not able to be transparent about the company they were working with. They cannot tell us if they are working with Amazon or not. But I do believe that Drozd in general, the previous CEO of AgEagle, was definitely not a very transparent guy. He didn't really give a lot of interviews and he was just not very present overall. Now we do have a new CEO, so let's see if that is going to change, if we are going to see a little bit more transparency instead. And just a few days ago, AgEagle also announced that they are going to hire new people. For example, this woman who is going to be the director of marketing, she is going to be overseeing all creative, brand building, lead generation, marketing, and advertising, and also digital and social media strategies for AgEagle and its subsidiary companies, of course. So that is going to be very interesting to see if AgEagle is going to have a bigger presence on the internet, for example, on social media. I would definitely like to see that. And by the way, I also hope that they are going to be more open to interviews so that I can do an interview with the CEO of AgEagle at some point in the future. The valuation of AgEagle could also be a potential issue, because if you look at the revenue of 2020, we can see that they just had $1.3 million in revenue. If we then go to my spreadsheet of my long-term portfolio, we can see that the current market cap of AgEagle is more or less 355 million. And if you have just a revenue of 1.3 million, then the price to sales ratio is 276. So that is, of course, pretty insane. However, do keep in mind that I believe that the revenue of 2021 is going to be way higher because of the companies they acquired this year, MicaSense and Measure, at the same time. And especially MicaSense, I believe they are going to bring in quite a lot of revenue, especially if you look at the revenue of 2020 of MicaSense. They did about like $7 to $8 million, of course, in revenue in 2020. So if they are going to continue that trend, and if Measure is also going to bring in some revenue, and AgEagle itself is also going to bring in some revenue, this revenue of 2021 could potentially even go to $10 million in total for 2021. And that is going to give you a price to sales ratio of about 35, which of course is way lower compared to the previous price to sales ratio we have just been looking at. The only issue that I would have with this increase in revenue is that it is mainly driven by acquiring new companies instead of growing organically. And then the very last thing I'm going to mention is the high costs, especially with regards to general and administrative costs and also the professional fees. If you look at the 10K of last year, the annual filing, you can see that we indeed had about $1.3 million in revenue, but we had $2.7 million in general and administrative costs and also $2.7 million in professional fees. So if they continue to spend this much money on these professional fees and general administrative costs, then it's going to be very difficult for AgEagle to be profitable in the future. So these are definitely some potential issues for AgEagle and drone companies in general, but there are also quite a lot of counter arguments possible. Now I'm very much looking forward to hearing from you as well. Do you believe that AgEagle is going to be one of the leaders of the drone age, or do you believe it's going to be another company? Let me know in the comments. And with that being said, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye!